Here we are once again, ladies and gentlemen, with another episode of Community Steel. Hopefully y'all been having a good time and things of that nature and creating some interesting designs. And let's start off with interesting designs with one from Vladislav. This is his EDN E1, and this is essentially a French-inspired super heavy tank. Weighs in at 103.87 tons, so almost 104 tons. Now the main turret, which is the bigger turret, is armed with a 90 millimeter gun and has 123 millimeters of penetration. The secondary turret, the front turret there, the smaller one, is armed with a 47 millimeter main gun with 68 millimeters of penetration. And this thing is for the early war period. And there's really nothing this vehicle can't penetrate with those two guns. If I was to engage targets, I would just probably use the 47. Unless I see a tiger, then I'd have to probably use the 90. So it's a pretty massive vehicle. It kind of gives that hail back to the massive land ship designs that they were doing. And all in all, I think it's a rather cool design. I like how he's got the tracks on the sides. The decals actually loaded for this one. Oh my God! Mark it on the calendar. All the decals actually loaded. I like how he did the doors. He's got actually a machine gun on the back of the main turret. You know, it's got that big land ship feel. I think the closest thing was the Char 2D or Char 2C. Had two turrets, had one turret facing the rear and one big turret on the front of the vehicle. So very reminiscent, similar to that. He also even modeled the coincidence rangefinders. I think that's actually cool. Even took the time to model the rangefinders. Mobility-wise, it's okay on flat land, but once you get off roads, forget about it. The maneuverability gets pretty bad pretty quick. And that's because it's just such a heavy vehicle. And it's got a ridiculously wide turn radius too. That's another problem with this vehicle, but it is a big, long tank. Now the next thing I would point out too is whenever you're using the main turret, looking down the sight of the main gun, and you're looking over the engine deck, which is actually in the middle, that engine vapor actually gets up in the sights. But all in all, not bad. The next vehicle I have here is from Obey the Lion. This is another early war tank, and this is his Matilda II. It's actually a really good model of a Matilda II as well. This weighs in at 22.87 tons, so almost 23 tons. It is armed with the 40 millimeter gun, so that's the 4-pounder if I recall correctly. And it's got 78 millimeters of penetration. The armor is actually rather good. I mean, it's right smack dab on what a Matilda's would be. The mobility is definitely way better than it should be for a Matilda. I mean, the Matilda's mobility was pretty horrid, to be honest. But that's what you get when you have to use a double-decker bus engine for a tank. Yeah. Now, I did have some issues going up against the Man-O-War here, but that being said, I don't have really anything, even in my personal stash, that evens up with the Man-O-War pretty good. Usually have to sneak for side shots and things of that nature on the Man-O-War. But that being said, this Matilda is actually really good. The mobility is superb. So it's if you're looking for a great medium tank, even though it doesn't have like a huge cannon or a ton of firepower, this is actually a good place to start, is Obey the Lion's Matilda II. Next vehicle I got here is the FV214 Conqueror from BH Mastiff. And this weighs in at 67.59 tons. Yeah, it's massive. It's a Conqueror. What can you expect? It's got a 120 millimeter gun, which is actually accurate to the actual Conqueror. And it's got 229 millimeters of penetration. It is made for the late war period. The mobility on this thing is actually not bad. The armor, especially in the front, is superb. The shortcoming of its armor is the side and the rear. It's just absolute paper. It's horrible. But that's actually legit to the Conqueror itself. He's actually got pretty good detail here on the engine deck and the turret itself. So actually a fairly accurate depiction of a FV214 Conqueror. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised, maybe with a couple modifications, you could turn this into a Super Conqueror. I don't know. I haven't tried, but that'd be interesting to find out in itself. Either ways, not a bad looking vehicle, very operational for what it needs to do. The mobility is just way better than it should be, to be honest. The British Conqueror was not a fast tank by any stretch of the imagination. The reload speed is definitely faster than it should be. I would say he probably edited the file so that way he could get the faster reload, but that's neither here nor there. I won't judge too much, especially because we don't have two-piece ammunition yet, which the Conqueror did shoot. But either ways, like I said, very good, heavy tank from BH Mastiff. I rather like this. The next vehicle I have here is the Skink AA, and this is from Zero. And when you spell Zero, if you do a search for him, you actually use a 0 at the end of his name. So it's spelled out Z-E-R 0. Get it? Hopefully you understand what I'm getting at. This is actually an AA version of the Sherman. This is the only variant of this I've actually seen. Now, I don't think this ever went into real production, but this was a real prototype that was designed and was planned to be used for World War II. Weighs in at 32.91 tons. It says it's got 20 millimeter cannons. I thought it was actually 50 cals. I'm not sure. It's got 54 millimeters of penetration, so not a lot of penetration. It's made for the mid-war period. Now, the armor on this thing is not reliable for anything. I mean, light tanks were penetrating this thing. The reverse gearing could use a bit of work, but that being said, it actually does look fairly accurate to the real prototype that this was based off of. And yeah, that rate of fire, I mean, just look at that. Bullets everywhere. Like, we are not fucking around here, folks. This is like minigun, 7,000 rounds per minute type fire. It would be nice if it actually had more ammo, because doing sustained fire with this thing, it really chews through the ammo really quick. So you can see it's only got 100 round, it'd be a 100 round belt for each gun, and it's got 4 guns. So that's rather cool. This thing would definitely down some air, get nasty and down some aircraft. But yeah, one problem is its armor is definitely lacking, so you don't want to use this as a frontline tank. That being said, it's not really meant to be a frontline tank either. And oh my god, that rate of fire is just so ridiculous. Alright, the next vehicle I have here is from High Ground, and this is a Schwarzwagen 103 Experimental. I don't know if I want to say this is a Schwarzwagen 103 Experimental, as it doesn't really look like a Schwarzwagen. No matter which way you look at it, it's a pretty cool vehicle. Really flat, kind of reminds me of like the Rheinmetall Borsig, where it's got a real low profile. It does got a pretty big gun for the late war period. It's got a 105 millimeter main gun, 205 millimeters of penetration. This gun is ridiculously accurate. I mean, dead balls accurate. It doesn't seem to have much in the way of gun depression, but it's also a real low sitting vehicle with the gun actually being mounted in the turret at the rear. So that's going to kind of kill the gun depression naturally, or at least it should. Weighs in at 32.39 tons. Mobility on this thing is actually not bad at all, even though you see me here, I'm trying to climb up a hill, and it kind of makes it seem like the mobility is bad, but no, it's actually not bad. It's just because of the hill. This is made for the late war period, and I would say it's actually a pretty conservative build. I mean, I guess you could say this could be a possible, Schwarzwagen 103 prototype, if you will, or an experimental, an idea, especially because it's got the 105 millimeter gun. It's got the, like I said, the real low frame construction to it. Armor-wise, I have no idea. I didn't test this thing's armor. I didn't want to test this thing's armor because I suspected probably would not have gone well for the vehicle. I'm suspecting the armor is rather thin, considering how lightweight the vehicle is and how small the vehicle is. Now, that being said, the armor is still going to be quite effective because it is sharply sloped. A lot of sloping. The engine's in the front, so that's going to help protect the crew from death if the engine gets hit. Kind of think of like the Merkava, if you will, where they have the engine in the front and the turret at the rear. But all in all, it's really cool design. I like the design. I like the detail that he's got on it. I like how he did the turret. It's got two big armor plates on the turret to provide additional armor protection for the crew. Now, the next vehicle I have is from Joe, and this is his T19. It's a Willys Jeep. Guys, it's a Jeep. It's for the mid-war period. It's got a 70mm recoilless rifle. I don't know if I'd want to call it a recoilless rifle. You'll see when I fire it. It's got 120mm of penetration, and it only weighs in at 5.32 tons. It weighs nothing. The armor is nothing on this thing. Literally, a machine gun will penetrate it. But it's a Jeep. It looks like a Jeep. It works like a Jeep. It quacks like a Jeep. And honestly, I think it's really good. It's a really good rendition. I don't know how he did everything on this. I suspect there might have been a little bit of blender involved in here. I don't really know for sure. I can pick out some of the details and go, yeah, I know how he did that, but definitely not everything. Now, I am struggling here trying to get up here, but this hill just sucks. Trying to get up this from this side, it's a real pain in the butt. Tough nut to crack. Let's see if I fire the main gun here again, though. It would be nice if we actually had steering. And I do like how he actually does have actual legit wheels, too, though. But it'd be nice if we had legit steering and better traction. Yeah, it's just the limitations of the current mechanics in Sprocket itself. It's not really the vehicle design. Alright, so the next vehicle I have here is an American prototype heavy tank. This is the T19E4 from Diamond Lime. And this weighs in at 64 tons even. It does have the 55mm main gun modeled as well as the 50 cals. It's actually got two 50 cals in the turret bustle, and then it's actually got a small turret with a 50 cal. The TC turret also has a 50 cal. The 155mm main gun's got 212mm of penetration and an ungodly long reload. Holy shit. It's almost 20 seconds. In Sprocket terms, that's a long time considering how short the engagements are. Now, of course, I killed myself backing up in a tree there, but as long as you keep this thing hull down, the armor is really good. This is definitely a tough nut to crack for any vehicle, at least that I have loaded in my Sprocket. This is designed for the late war period. Obviously, it would be because it's the T110E4, which was a vehicle that was actually designed in the 50s. So this is even after the war, even. This is early Cold War, if you will. Detail-wise, yeah, I mean, it looks like the vehicle it's supposed to be depicting, down to the engine deck, the big bulky engine deck that it has. Even has the proper exhaust manifold, if you will, exhaust guards. See, look at that. That's just ridiculous. And that's only two of the machine guns. That's the coaxial machine guns that's next to the 155mm main gun. I do believe, though, I do take a moment to show that the TC turret is operational. And I don't know what's going on here. I'm just having a bad time actually getting a good shot on the Centurion that's actually shooting at me. I don't know what it is. That thing's armor seems OP. Let's get this turned around here. And boom. No more Sturmpanzer. That's just a massive gun. 155mm gun. It's just massive. And it's, you know, it's, yeah, I've showed vehicles with bigger guns than this, and I've showed other vehicles with 155s, but I don't think any of them actually, I might be mistaken, I don't think any vehicles I showed previously actually had a 155mm anti-tank gun. Oh, then here we go. Now we got the turret going. That's the TC, it's 50 cal. So yeah, just going nuts with it. And of course, a lot of fire. Fun times. All right, the final victim for the day is the HGS 1059 by Herr Gunter. This weighs in at 54.56 tons. It's armed with a 90 millimeter main gun, has 157 millimeters of penetration. However, the two smaller turrets are armed with a 45 millimeter gun with 81 millimeters of penetration. Absolutely perfect for going after light tanks. This is for the mid-war period, and this reminds me kind of the Japanese heavies that you get in World of Tanks. What is that? The Oni, I think, is the one I'm thinking of. I might be thinking of a different one, but I think it's the Oni that's got the two. Well, then there's the OI, but this is more like the other one, the bigger, the more massive late tier one. Of course, it's scaled down and it's got a smaller gun, but actually that allows the vehicle to actually be used in missions. Mobility-wise, the mobility seems solid. Speed-wise, the speed seems solid. I mean, generally speaking, all the way around, this seemed like a very solid vehicle to use. Very user-friendly, actually. So, yeah, just really good, to be honest. I like the detail of the engine deck. I like how he actually did the exhaust, where he actually mated them together and then they come out. Let's see if we can get, okay. Well, I did bad there, but yeah, sometimes the gun lands a little short. That's more on me than the tank itself, because I'm old and shit. We already know. Yeah, right through the Panther's turret. Gun mantlet and all. But anyway, folks, that's going to wrap up today's Community Steel video. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for tuning in. Had a pretty extensive list today. 8 vehicles total. Anyway, folks, once again, thank you very much for tuning in. Have a good one.